All right, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Rod Johnson. I am the Lender Relations Specialist at the SBA here in Washington, D.C. So this morning, we're going to talk about the PPP and the EIDL programs. And really, between the panelists, we're all going to give you a pretty good overview and deep dive into both programs. Now, I know this morning, for some of you woke up and the streets are paved white with snow. But what I'd like to say is, from my vantage point, the streets are paved with greenbacks. I have some statistics that I want to lay out to you guys this morning regarding PPP. So for the District of Columbia, and this is as of February 15th, the District of Columbia has filed 3,838 applications, and what's been approved is $496 million just for Washington, D.C. I want to see more of that $284 billion on the street in Washington, D.C. So I am encouraging you to get out and apply for PPP. We have two excellent banks being represented here today, M&T and City First Bank. Some of the other statistics that I want to make note of is that there has been $126 billion so far put out on the street as of February 15th of the $284 billion that was approved to be put out on the streets back in December 27th, 2020. There have been 1,673,000 applications overall that have been processed for PPP 2.0. And we have 5,141 lenders that are participating in the program. Now, who are our largest processors of these PPP loans? It's actually JP Morgan coming in at $4 billion, in terms of dollars, $4.4 billion. Bank of America has processed $4.1 billion. Now we have a new venture called Itria Ventures at $3.5 billion of PPP money that they have processed thus far. The average loan size is $76,000 for PPP funds. So that represents 86% of the PPP loans processed are actually $76,000. Okay. So again, I just want to let you know there's $159 billion left in the program. And the program runs through March 31st, 2020. So get out there and go to these two banks that are represented and get your PPP money to sustain your businesses during this pandemic. Next slide, please. All right, so let's talk about the qualifications. So we know business and nonprofits with fewer than 300 employees can borrow up to $2 million. But you must demonstrate a 25% or greater decline in gross revenue. At 24%, at 24.5, I've been getting calls about, well, Mr. Johnson, can we round up? No, it's 25% or greater decline in gross revenues during any one quarterly period, comparing 2019 to 2020. So, quick example, you can compare March 31st, 2019 to March 31st, 2020, showing that 25% decline. Or we can take September 30, 2019 and compare it to September 30, 2020 to show that 25% decline or greater. Okay, but it must be 25%. Now, let me take a second here because I want to help my bankers out. So you as the majority owner, you must sign the QuickBooks statements, okay? You must sign and date the QuickBooks statements attesting to the veracity of the numbers that you are handing in to the bank, okay? Also, if you get compilations or reviewed quality financial statements from a CPA, then you must also sign those statements. The only statements that don't need to be signed are audited financial statements from your CPA, okay? So please, let's make sure that those statements are signed so that we don't slow down the process getting your application process. All right. Okay. PPP 1.0, as they want to say here, is still open. Just remember, you must use all of the PPP 1 money before obtaining the PPP 2.0. Now, you may say, I'm having an issue, using up all my money. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and bonus that money to your employees and call it hazard pay. All right. Now, let's not be discriminatory, and this is what I mean. So you can't give one employee $250 and another employee $500 and another employee $1,000. Let's be consistent across the board. If you determine that you want to give your employees, a $500 hazard pay bonus, then everybody gets a $500 hazard pay bonus, except you, the owner. Okay, owner, do not give yourself a bonus. All right, first draw, people. This is the only time in life where it's okay for you to have procrastinated. All right, because that's not usually the case. So if you did not take part in PPP 1.0, here's your opportunity. If you've never received a PPP loan, then you can apply using the old rules. So as I said before, the second draw, you're limited to a $2 million loan. Here, first draw, it's 10 million, okay? It's 10 million. And it's 500 employees or less, not 300, 500 employees or less, okay? All right, next slide, please. You can tell PPP excites me because I like getting money out there on the street, okay? Make sure you guys are sustaining your businesses. All right, so what do you have for me on the next slide, Linda?
Okay, just a second. Okay, there you go.
I think we go into the calculations, and yes, we do. All right, so 2.5 times, all right? It's 2.5 times your monthly average payroll in 2019 or 2020. Now, if you're self-employed, right, your single member LLC, your sole proprietorship, your 1099, all right, what you're gonna do is go to line 31 on your Schedule C, okay? You're gonna divide that by that number by 12 times 2.5 for either 2019 or 2020, okay? I'm getting a lot of calls. Is it really my revenues, my gross revenues that's 2.5 times? No, it's line 31, net profit, okay, on the Schedule C. Now, it must be a positive number because I'm getting calls of people saying, well, my bank is telling me that I'm not eligible using my Schedule C. You must have a net profit, okay? You must. All right, so I thought I'd let you know that. Now, you get to choose the higher of the two, right? So if your payroll was higher in 2020, then that's what you're going to use, okay? And where's that coming from? The 941. Now, payroll costs slightly expanded, and I hope that this is a good example for you, this chart. So what's included? Gross pay for U.S. residents up to $100,000 for the year, plus the employer's share of insurance. This is what it includes. I still get a lot of questions on this. Health, dental, vision, now disability and life. But again, it's the employer share. And what I did with this chart is I put it in red where it says disability and life, okay? So that you can see now that this is what's included in the payroll cost. And what I've done is I've given you an example, whether it's 3, 5, or 6 employees, and you can see it going all the way across, okay? Now, and we see our monthly average is $25,633. Keep that number in mind because we're going to use it later in the presentation. Next slide, please. All right, so now you know it's 2.5 times, okay? Now, if you're in the hospitality industry or the restaurant industry, and you have a NAICS code that begins with 72, and what I've done is given you a chart here, okay? You can see what the codes are with the titles, all right? But anyway, if you have a NAICS code beginning with the 72, it's 3.5 times, not 2.5 times in the calculation for the loan amount, okay? So it's very easy. You can find the NAICS code on the 1120, the 1120S, and the 1065. It's on the upper left-hand column of the tax return, okay? or you can find a NAICS code. I'm making it easy for you. I'm pointing it out for you right here, that you can go right there. If it begins with a 72, then you know that it is 3.5 times, not 2.5 times. All right, next slide, please. All right, so we know the program says what? 60% can be used for payroll, the other 40% for specific expenses. Let's review. Gas, water, electric, interest on a commercial mortgage, business landline phone, business cell phone, transportation, okay? That was how 40% of the money could be used for PPP to pay those expenses. Now we have 4 new categories, okay? 4 new categories. So operating expenses. I just call it, now you can use some of the money on software, like getting that new accounting system, QuickBooks. If you're not using it, QuickBooks, for payroll services, right? Such as Paychecks, ADP, Ceridian, those guys, right? Inventory tracking, a CRM, right? You can also use operating expenses toward that. Worker protection expenses, the face mask, having your employees tested for COVID-19, protective face mask, okay? A new drive-through, new barriers. You can now use money for that. Property damage. Let's say you have property damage from looting and vandalism, okay? Like we experienced here in Washington, D.C. downtown. For the expenses that your insurance company does not cover, you can use the PPP money toward that. And then you can also use money towards some supplies where you're restocking some of your inventory. Now, here's the key, because remember when I mentioned earlier that maybe you're having a hard time using all of the PPP money 1.0. All right, so I'm gonna give you a little trick here. So now, if you've already submitted your PPP for 1.0 for forgiveness, you cannot go back and capture these expenses, okay? You cannot do it. However, if you have not, okay, put in for forgiveness, here's where it works. You can go back and now capture these expenses, right? Because remember, you're having a hard time using all of your money. So either you can do both. You can bonus some of the money, and now you can go back and capture these expenses to be able to use all of the PPP 1.0 money, okay? So hopefully now you have a way that you can use all of your PPP 1.0 money so that now you can apply for the second draw. All right, next slide, please. Improvements. All right, well, if you remember, and I'm gonna go through the forms, because I think this is important. So if you remember, we had the regular 3508 form. That was for loans that were 2 million up to 10 million. And we had the 3508EZ form. That was for loans that were $50,001 up to $2 million. And then we had the 3508S form, short form, for loans $50,000 and below. Here's the improvement. What we found from PPP 1.0 out of that $525 billion, okay, 86% of those loans were under $150,000. And so now the 3508 form has been updated to now show 150,000 and below. It's a 1-page form. Guys, I'm telling you, it'll only take you 10 minutes. I've looked at the form. It's only 10 minutes to actually complete. Now, it's really a 3-page document. Pages 2 and 3 are actually the instructions on actually how to fill out the top form, okay? But if you need assistance, you have your SCORE volunteers, you have your local small business development centers, you have your chambers, you have your women business centers, okay? And you have your veteran centers that can all provide free assistance to you. I would just ask that you would help my fellow bankers here and not ask them how to fill out the form, because it takes them away from actually processing your money to get in your hands to sustain your business. So please use those free resources. Make sure the application is correct, okay, before you send it in to your bank for processing. All right, EIDL. The Economic Aids Act fixed this, and you'll see why it's a big deal. The EIDL advance will not be deducted from your forgiveness amount, okay? That's huge because that's what was happening. People would go in for forgiveness. The EIDL advance wasn't deducted. Let's use the $100,000 example. So you had a $100,000 PPP loan. You had a $10,000 EIDL advance, but the EIDL advance wasn't deducted. The bank submits it to the SBA. The SBA only forgives $90,000 because the $10,000 from the EIDL advance wasn't forgiven. So here you are, Mr. or Mrs. Customer. The bank is saying, oh, you have a $10,000 loan at 1%. We want your money. All right, well, the Economic Aids Act actually took care of that, okay? So you will not have a loan. The EIDL advance will not be deducted from your forgiveness amount. That's huge. All right, now you have a flexible end date. For your loan coverage period, you can choose between 8 weeks and 24 weeks, okay? And for PPP 1.0 loan coverage period is now extended to March 31st of this year. Now, here's another big one, the tax clarification. When PPP first came out, Congress had intended it to always be exempt from federal taxes, okay? But they forgot to tell the IRS that. So here the IRS is sending notices out to the banks and everybody else saying, guys, this is a taxable event, okay? Well, the Economic Aid Act actually fixed that. So it is not a federal taxable event, okay? The other thing was, what did they tell you? You couldn't use, if you use the PPP money for those expenses that I just named, well, you know what? You couldn't really deduct it on the business tax return. The Economic Aid Act has now fixed that issue. So now between the CPAs, the customers, and the banks, we all have a sigh of relief about that, okay? All right, thank you. Next slide, please. All right, so documentation and eligibility. So let's go over to eligibility. So as before, you had 506s that were not eligible for the program, but now you have destination marketing organizations, you have newspapers, TV, radio, public broadcasters, and are now eligible for PPP. Now, bankruptcy. Please, if you are if you have filed for Chapter 7, you can't get a first PPP draw. I've been getting those questions, either via email or telephone call. I was surprised to get those calls, thinking that you filed a Chapter 7 and you're asking for PPP money. No. However, Chapter 11, okay, first draw, just understand, yes, you can. However, just know that the PPP loan takes precedence, or the word they use here, supersedes all other claims, okay? So that's the distinction. Chapter 11, okay. Chapter 7, a no-no, all right? The business should not be permanently shut down, which is what happens in the Chapter 7. All right, so they talk about the calculation. We know that there needs to be a 25% reduction in your revenues or more, okay? How do we get the loan amount? It's going to come off of your 941 or your Schedule C. How do we know that you have a 25% drop in your revenue? Your income statement or bank statements. But to be honest with you, the bankers would prefer an income statement, okay? So we don't have to go month by month through the bank statements to figure out that you had a 25% drop in revenues, okay? So please provide the income statements. It makes it easier for everybody involved. All right, next slide.
Hey, Rod.
Yes,
Rod,
yes.
real quick, I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I wanted to chime in right here because I'm getting a lot of questions on this particular point where if a business is opened say late in 19, or maybe they opened in January, how do they show that 25% revenue reduction?
All right, so we know that as of February 15, 2020, they need to have been in existence. Okay.
Correct. Yep.
That's, all right, so when you say so you're saying January 2020, they were just getting started?
Yeah, yeah. And I don't want to derail you at all, Rod. I apologize. But this has happened several times with us where maybe a business was started late in 19, right? I thought we got guidance that said, hey, the SBA is saying you can compare 2 quarters as long as you can prove that you were in business by, February 15, you can compare 2 quarters in 2020. We've had several of those.
What do you get? All right.
I'm sorry, Rod. Go ahead.
Let's get it at the end because it's going to be a detailed answer. Okay.
All right. Perfect. Thank you.
So don't let me forget it. Just ask it again at the end. All right. First come, first serve. Okay. So now we're into the targeted loans. Now, if my math is right, about $40 billion is targeted for businesses that are located in moderate to low income areas. Okay. So here we are. Businesses with fewer than 10 employees located in a mid to low income area who never received a PPP loan, there's $15 billion set aside for that. Okay. Businesses with 10 or fewer employees located in a low to moderate income area who did get a PPP loan and now want a second draw, there's $25 billion set aside just for that. And you can go to your CDFIs, your community banks, your minority depository banks, and microloan intermediaries to get that money, okay? The maximum loan amount is $250,000. So Congress heard you when you said that there wasn't enough money being specifically dedicated to businesses located in low to moderate income areas. Well, here you have it, about $40 billion dedicated just for that. All right, next slide, please. Now, here is, remember the PPP loan application. It's very easy to complete. If you remember from slide 3 here, we calculated our monthly payroll at $25,633. We multiplied it by 2.5, and you get your $64,082. Okay. Now I'm gonna give you a website, sba.gov/PPP. That's where you can get any and all documents, the actual economic aid bill, everything you want to know about EIDL, the forgiveness, the forms, everything is at sba.gov/PPP. Everything you need to know is right there, okay? So to save you some time, I put in some URLs here at the bottom where you could get the form 2483, okay? And it should say SD at the bottom or next to it. But just go to sba.gov/PPP, and you can get all the forms and things that you need for the PPP program. Next slide, please. So now you guys, you can see by this, you can how easy it is to apply. Here we're giving you some of the top lenders. If you don't have a lender, you have the URL here that you can choose a lender if you don't have a relationship with the bank. And also know that the fintechs are also in on the PPP game. You have Lendio, you have OnDeck, you have Cabbage, PayPal, and some of the others that are also processing, these PPP 2.0s, okay? Next slide, please. All right, so now we have the EIDL that are now available. Now, one of the things I'm going to say to you is that they will actually, the SBA, meaning the SBA, will actually contact you. Well, let's go through this and let's do a reminder. All right, so EIDL. EIDL is a loan. It is not a forgivable loan. It is a loan. It is a 30-year loan. It's not forgivable. The expenses that I named earlier with the PPP, you can use the idle money for that. The maximum amount is $150,000. You can have 500 employees or less that are located in the US. Now underline in the US, okay? The interest rate is 2.75 for nonprofits, 3.75 for all others. If the loan amount is over $25,000, the SBA is going to take a UCC1 or a blanket lien on the assets of the business. All right. The loan payments are deferred for 12 months. And however, the interest is accruing. So for those of you who have an existing idle loan, don't email me, email directly, PDC Recons, right? It stands for, reconsideration, PDC RECONS at SBA.gov, and make sure you put the word increase in the subject line along with your current idle number, okay? And then you'll be reconsidered. Now, note, if you already applied for idle, the grant is not available to you on an emergency basis, okay? This is supposed to be a really targeted program. Next slide, please. So how do you apply? What qualifications do you have to meet for the idle grant? All right, unlike PPP, you have to show a 30% drop in your revenues, okay? And it gives you the dates here on when you have to be able to show that. But just like PPP, we want to see preferably the income statement, okay? That's preferably what we'd like to see is the income statement showing that 30% drop. And then two, the business must be located in a census tract where 20% or more of the population lives in poverty, or the median family income is 80% or less of the statewide or metro area median family income. Now, all you need to do is go to this URL, type in your zip code, and it'll tell you if your business falls within the right census tract, okay? And the SBA will issue a maximum grant of $10,000. Now, they say it's forgivable. It really is a grant. So it's not a loan that needs to, where you have to fill out paperwork or anything like that. It is truly a grant, okay? All right, next slide, please. Now, I'll take a pause just for a minute. For those of you that like to do a lot of reading, the act itself that was passed on December 27th is about 5,600 pages, all right? But what you want to focus on is section 300, okay, of the legislation. And you'll see later on, I think it's this presentation, where what I've done is gone through and given you the page numbers of where you can find the information that you need, okay? All right, so we'll keep going. All right, so businesses not, oh, wait a minute, go back. So businesses not located in a low-income community are also eligible, but here's the two criteria. You've received an idle loan, but you never received the grant. So if you remember, the idle loan came out first, and it was about a month and a half later that the grant came out. So you got the loan, but you didn't get the grant because the grant wasn't available to you. All right, or you qualified for idle, but you never applied for either the loan or the grant. Okay, so one of those two. Now, the SBA will reserve the right to make sure you qualify and will verify all the information. Once all that's been done, they have 21 days to get the money into your account, okay? But the SBA will actually be contacting you for this. You don't contact the SBA. All right, next slide, please. Now, here's what's exciting for me, and it should be exciting for the bankers. So now for the microloan, 7A, 504 loans, borrowers, you have no SBA fees. The banks, they don't pay the SBA annual fee to participate in the program. What's there not to love about that? All right, then for the 7A, I call it the signature 7A program because I like the 7A, okay? Particularly for real estate. I'm biased. I like the 7A over the 504. I'm telling you that up front. All right, so the banks usually get a 75% guarantee from the bank, from the SBA. Now they get a 90% guarantee for the 7A signature program. A 90% guarantee, unheard of, all right? Since the SBA has been in existence in 1953, unheard of, okay? For the 7A SBA Express, that normally would go up to $350,000, now because of COVID-19, it goes up to $1 million. Normally the banks get a 50% guarantee, now it's a 75% guarantee, okay? Man, we're really minimizing the bank's risk on this thing. A 75% guarantee on an SBA Express up to $1 million. Now, as of September 30, 2021, the SBA Express will permanently go up to $500,000, which is great. That's great. All right, 504, no fees. Okay, no fees. You gotta love it. Here's the other part. The SBA, on your behalf, borrower, will pay the first 6 months of principal and interest on those new loans. Microloan, 7A, 504. The first 6 months of principal and interest, okay? What's there not to like about that? No fees. For the first 6 months, you're having your principal and interest paid for on your behalf by the SBA. All right, now, as a part of this debt relief, 3 months of your existing 7A 504 microloan, right? The SBA for 3 months is paying principal and interest on your existing loan. So here we are, your cash flow. Man, you gotta love this. On your existing SBA loans, we're paying 3 months of principal and interest. You go get a new loan, 7A 504 or microloan, we're paying 6 months. What's there not to like about that? Go get the money. All right, so you have PPP, draw one, because you procrastinated, so you didn't get it the first time. So you get your first draw. You use up all that money. Then you get PPP 2.0, okay? You get to use that money to sustain your business. Now, the SBA is paying 3 months of principal and interest on your existing SBA loans. 4, now you get a new 7A 504 microloan, and the SBA is actually paying principal and interest for 6 months. Oh my gosh. Then when you bring the funds in from DC where, you've applied for a grant or a loan, folks, there's all kind of money out there to help you sustain and grow your business. Go get the money. Next slide, please, Linda. You can tell I get excited about this. All right, we already talked about this. Go ahead to the next slide. All right, so the grants for shuttered venue and operators, okay? There's still information coming out about this, all right? And actually, I think it came out a day or so, maybe about a day or so ago. I need to actually get the time to read it, all right? But here's what I do know. All right, so we all know about the 930 Club and the Kennedy Center and the Improv and all these places, right? Rams Head, okay? These are the places that can, and the AMC movie theaters and those places, right? They're the ones that are eligible. They have to have been in operation by February 29th, 2020 with less than 500 full-time employees. They cannot have received a PPP loan after what, December 20, says here, 26. The grant money must be used the same as the PPP, 60% payroll, 40% for those expenses, and they've added some others like marketing, ad, staging, and some other events, okay? The grant is 45% of the 2019 annual revenues if it existed before 2019, or the 6 months average revenues in 2019 if it existed after January 1, 2019. And then there's a supplemental grant available to extend through June 30, 2022 at 50% of the initial grant that you receive. Now, I gave you the URL, it's there at the bottom. And if you have questions, it's svogrant@sba.gov. Next slide, please. All right, so this is where I was talking about earlier. Remember I said this was a 5,600-page document? All right, so what I've done is gone through, so if you want to know, the NAICS code 5151, you go to page 2098 in the actual legislation, okay? If you want to know about the changes to the 7A program, you go to page 2164. So for those of you that like to read late at night, I've given you the pages to go to for every topic that's covered in the Economic Aid Act, okay? It's right here for you. All right, next slide, please. And we should be coming to the end. Okay, so for EIDL, please don't email me. Email the guys down there in the Office of Disaster Assistance. Here's the 800 number. Here's their email, okay? Just work with them directly because the district office doesn't have any jurisdiction over the Office of Disaster Assistance that's down there in Texas. All right, your resource partners that I mentioned earlier, SCORE, Women Business Center, Veterans Business Center, your chambers, your Small Business Development Center, okay? In this case, we have them here in Northern Virginia and in Washington, D.C. Oh, and of course, how can I forget my one at the University of Maryland, okay? So you have enough free resources. If you need assistance with either completing the PPP application for money or for forgiveness, please use these free resources. Please do not call your bankers and ask for assistance to fill out the forms. They need to be processing the information that you're sending to them, either for a new loan or for forgiveness. Please don't bog them down and ask them to help you fill out line 2 on the PPP application form, okay? All right, good. Next slide, please. All right, avoid the scams. If you see something that says SBA.com, you know it's a scam, okay? That's really all I need to say about that slide. All right, next slide, please. Now, this gives you a breakdown of the CDFI lenders and how much has been set aside for each category, but I actually went over that earlier. But just know that the one I did forget was the shuttered venue operators. It is $15 billion set aside for that, okay? I did mention the $20 billion set aside for the emergency EIDL grant, and then the targeted grant is $20 billion. All right, next slide, please. And that's it. So we're going to Sonja, I think you are next. I guess we're gonna hold all our questions to the very, very end is what we're going to do. But now I'm gonna introduce Sonja, all right? So I call her a banker extraordinaire. She was a relationship manager at Wachovia, now Wells Fargo, and at M&T Bank. Then she moved over to City First as a senior vice president relationship manager. But now I am proud to say, and I have to bow to her now, because she is the chief lending officer, okay, at City First Bank. The only African-American female in Washington, D.C. as the chief lending officer. A very proud accomplishment. I tell you that I'm very proud of you, Sonja, that you're now the chief lending officer at City First Bank. So congratulations. And so with that, Sonja will now take over.
Thank you, Rod. Good morning, everyone. Well, first off, Rod has done an amazing job covering the details as it relates to forgiveness, as it relates to, the program, how it works, what not to do, how to avoid the pitfalls, and so forth and so on. So thank you, Rod, for being so comprehensive with the program. That helps both me and Andy, with the folks that are on the line today, to really understand how this program works. So payroll protection program, and you guys can move to Linda, you can go to the next slide. This just talks about, City First Bank and who we are, and that, we definitely are very intentional and disciplined about supporting, small businesses in in the low to moderate income communities and really trying to close that wealth gap. So City First is very dedicated. It's in our DNA. We're champions of the underserved communities. So next slide. There. Okay, so yes, we are, City First Bank is not only City First Bank, but we are City First Enterprises, which is a nonprofit loan fund. We are City First New Markets. So we are one of the largest new market tax credit practices in the country. We are City First Homes, and we are City First Foundation. So not only at the bank level are we committed to supporting not-for-profits and small business organizations, developers and investors throughout the DMV, but we have a host of other entities that also do that work as well. Next slide. Over the years, over the past 20 years, we've deployed about $1.38 billion in capital within the communities, the low to moderate income communities, as it relates to affordable housing, jobs retained, clients that are in, that serve, those same individuals in community facilities, educational seats. We do not only at schools, but charter schools as well. And over $300 million has been deployed through our new market tax credit program in Ward 7 and 8. So really great things that City First Bank is all about. Next slide, Linda. This talks about really our target markets and, who our customer segments are, the geographic footprint that we serve, and the partnerships that we have. One of which, of course, is the DC Chamber of Commerce, as well as DMPED, and numerous other philanthropic organizations, public and private partnerships that we have, including SBA. Rod, we work very closely with his organization. And so again, we focus on affordable housing, not-for-profits, small to medium-sized businesses, and other mission-aligned depositors. And we focus on the DMV and low to moderate income communities, specifically urban communities within the City First market. Next slide. So Rod has gone over all of this, so I will just reiterate again. If you are a sole proprietor, if you're an independent contractor, if you're a single member LLC, you can participate in the PPP program. You can utilize your 2019 or your 2020 tax returns, Schedule C. And again, I'm going to reiterate the calculation. It is your net income bottom line, not your revenue. It's your net income. And you take line 31, divide it by 12, multiply it by 2.5, and to get to your the number that you're qualified for in terms of a loan amount. So I can't emphasize that enough. Folks want to go to the revenue line, and that is not that's not how we do it. This is how the calculation is done as it relates for sole props, for independent contractors, and single member LLCs. Next slide. So payroll calculations, Rod has kind of already gone through this, but he really has talked about the importance of using your payroll processor reports, your CARES Act form. Most of the payroll processors do have a CARES Act form that they have been utilizing. So please ask them for that, and it'll make life much simpler in terms of the calculation. And, and this form, we utilize this information for corporations and not-for-profit organizations. Again, this is a breakdown, and this is a monthly calculation. Rod showed the annual calculation, but this is the monthly calculation. I want to concentrate on, if you go down to Warren Buffett and his cash compensation of $9,000 on a monthly basis. Note that if you multiply 9,000 by 12, that's $108,000. If you, so any income received over $100,000 is not calculated. So you have to reduce that payroll amount by $667 in order to get, on a monthly basis, in order to get to your covered period wages, to get you to your 27,533,000 times 2.5 get you to your loan amount of 68,832. $2,550. Make sure that you mention that you've submitted, and they will reduce the loan amount where necessary. So take the time. And one of the things I can't emphasize enough, the recommendation that I would have is don't rush through completing the application. To Rod's point, it's very simple, but oftentimes we're rushing through. And we had one guy that submitted the entire application, realized that he inverted some numbers, and we had to go back. We had to cancel that application. He had to resubmit the application, and we had to start all over again. Take your time. Do not rush through it. Make sure that you've got your numbers. If you tend to invert numbers or be dyslexic, or the person that you have completing it for you is dyslexic, make sure that you check the numbers, because it's just going to slow the process down in terms of getting your money. Next slide. So second draw eligibility, Rod has covered this, in detail. It's either quarter over quarter or annually. You must have a 25% reduction in your revenue. You cannot have a 24.5 or 23.3. Nobody's rounding up. We had that before. I mean, they wanted a meeting, they wanted to talk, and it's like, no, there's no talking. Either it's 25% or more, or nothing. So I can't emphasize enough. This particular example shows where the business incurred a 40% reduction in their revenue. So therefore they are eligible. But for that second draw, 25% quarter over quarter or 25% year over year. And you do have to produce proof of that. Your profit and loss statement, your tax returns, whatever you have. Again, you have to certify, you do have to sign it so that if at some point it's when you finally do submit your taxes, it doesn't show that, trust me, you're going to be in a little bit of trouble there. So make sure that you are taking the time, and again, to make sure that you're entering the right numbers and that you really are indeed eligible for your for a second draw. Next slide. And so this is how you can, if you have questions for us relative to can you apply with us, we have PPP inquiry at cityfirstbank.com. We also, if you want to start your either first draw or second draw request, there's the link as well. We do have an automated platform. This gets to go around. The last time we were gluttons for punishment and we did it all manually. We still got 33 million out of the door, but nonetheless, I do want to say that we learned our lesson, and this time we're using an automated process at City First. And not only for first draw request or second draw request, but also for the PPP forgiveness process. So that being said, I do just a couple of other things that I really do want to emphasize. I know that there have been lots of issues when we get to the SBA. And oftentimes we're running across verification errors, and we're running across up against DUNS numbers and a variety of situations. SBA has done everything that they can to rectify most of those issues and problems. But if for some reason the bank has to come back to you and ask for information to assist in this process, be forthcoming, be responsive, and get the information. Do not argue with the bank as to why do you need that? The law, the rule says this, the rule says that. That's just going to delay you getting your money. It could prevent you from getting your money, because when we get to SBA, and if we're encountering these errors and we cannot get past SBA at the back end, there will be no dollars to you. And so you can argue all you want, you can spend a whole lot of time, or you can help the bank get through the process. So that's one thing that I really do want to emphasize, because that has slowed down a lot of financial institutions in terms of trying to get these matters resolved. And I think it's just really important to note that. I can't emphasize enough the importance of making sure that you are responsive and just getting the information that's needed, because other than that, it really will slow you down in terms of getting your PPP loan and the dollars that you need into your pocket and into your bank account. Like Rod said, he loves to put money on the street. He gets excited. So do we. And so help us out when we have to come to you for that information. Final slide. All right, and this is my direct contact information. So I believe, well, we have one panelist left, and last is not least. So let me introduce Andy Serene, and I've known Andy for quite some time. We used to work together at M&T. He actually was one of my underwriters, so back in the day. So Andy is a business banking team leader at M&T. He is responsible for managing the business banking activity in Washington, D.C. and Bethesda, Maryland. His team manages banking relationships for companies generating revenue of $30 million and under in a wide range of industries, including not-for-profit organizations as well as associations. Andy has over 20 years of commercial banking experience and has worked in various roles and markets for M&T Bank over the last 16 years. Andrew's team is responsible for providing banking services to businesses in the communities they serve, and to help them grow, they provide them with industry information and to make valuable introductions within their network. Andy, his wife, and 3 kids currently reside in Northern Virginia. Without further ado, let me have my friend take over. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sandra. And Rod, you got me all fired up. We got a lot of tools out there, a lot of ways to get some money out on the street. So you guys really covered it. I don't have too much to add, and I'm looking at my watch and we only got a couple minutes and I want to hear some questions. So real quick, just about M&T, we've always been really active with the SBA. Typically #1 SBA lender in the footprints we operate in. I did want to give you guys some information just comparing PPP1 to PPP2. And I know I'm speaking fast, but I want to give some perspective on the demand for 1 versus 2. So with PPP1, M&T processed 37,000 requests, and we funded about $7 billion in loans. Now, in comparison, PPP2, we're about at 13,000 applications, and we funded about $1.7 billion in loans. So I wanted to share that. The demand is a lot less, which, to Rod's point, we got a lot of money left. There's $159 billion left to lend. So if you need help, you let us know. Let me, let Sandra know, let your resources know, let your banker know that you're interested and you want to apply. I can tell you with M&T, our portal is open. All you need to do is have a business checking account with us, and we can get you started on your application. So I had a couple other things, but guys, I know some questions have piled up, and I want to answer your questions and hear what's top of mind for you. So Linda, why don't I pass it off to you and we can start Q&A.
All right. Okay, so we'll go back up to the first question. First question, it says, is SunTrust Bank part of the lenders? And I don't know if anybody can answer that question or not. Rod, you're on mute, Rod.
Yes, Truist or SunTrust and SunTrust is participating in the program. They are.
Okay. Second question, if your 6 months time frame for the first draw and you did not use it, can you use it now?
Yes, you can still use the money. And I gave you actually 2 ways to actually use it, right? So now you have 4 more categories of expenses, which are in the slide. And then you can also bonus the money to your employees and call it hazard pay.
Okay. So this is for any of the panelists here. Can you use the pay for overtime not reimbursed by the payer source?
For overtime. You know, that question actually hasn't come up. Has that come up with any of you guys, Sandra or Andrew?
No, it's the first time I'm hearing that one.
That's the first time I'm hearing that. All right, so I'm gonna give my email address. So it's roderick.johnson@sba.gov. Please send that question to me. That's a good question. I've never had it before. So send that to me so I can get the correct answer out to you.
Next question, what is the contact for the loan forgiveness document help?
Well, you have a number of, let's see. You know what? I may have it, bear with me. I may have it right here. You located in DC? I'm assuming you're located in DC. Wait a minute. Well, you can dial 202, I think it's 205-1000 is the number for SCORE. or Howard University, they can also help you at 202-806-1550.
Okay. Next question was still not clear where to apply for PPP 2.0. We applied for PPP 1.0 through our bank. We have an account. Do we go back and log into it through that portal, or do we log in elsewhere? My bank has been unresponsive to this question.
Hey, Rod, I can jump in real
Okay.
quick on this one, and maybe Sandra, you might have some to add too. I know, so at M&T, we sent out another portal. So on PPP2, if you went through a portal with the bank you're with now, you should have received a second portal to go through to start your PPP2 process. Now, if you haven't received anything from your bank and you've tried to reach out and they're non-responsive, then you might want to go to a plan B and reach out either to a bank that's currently working on PPP2 and can get you a portal and can get you set up. But you should have received a second portal. I know every bank's doing it differently, so I can only tell you what we did, but we sent out second portals to everybody. And I think Sandra started the portal process this time, right?
Yeah, I mean, last time we did not have a portal. We were doing everything manually. This time we do have a portal, and you can go straight to our website, and there's a link and you can just click on it and it'll take you right to the portal to start your application. And also, although M&T does require that you have a checking account with us, with them, we do not require that as a CDFI. Since we serve communities that oftentimes don't necessarily have, deep banking relationships, we will allow you to come to us even if you don't have a checking account with us.
Okay, thanks. So the next question is, do we need to have applied for PPP 1 forgiveness in order to apply for PPP 2?
You do not. Some banks would like you to do that, but according to the legislation, no, you do not have to apply for forgiveness first before getting your PPP 2.0.
And next question, do I need to have an account in City First Bank in order to apply for a PPP loan?
Well, I just answered that. No, you do not. You can come to City First and go to our website, cityfirstbank.com, and there is a banner that talks about PPP. You can click on that, and then you'll go straight to our portal, and you can start your application.
Okay. And Andrew, there was a couple of questions that I submitted to you ahead of time. Do you have those questions?
Linda, I don't have them in front of me, but I remember, I think one was about SunTrust. Is SunTrust taking applications? I think.
Okay, I do have them. Let's see.
Yeah, Rod had just answered that. And then the other one was about what's deductible from a tax perspective. And Rod talked about that. Now what's happening is, and I reached out to some CPAs on this, just to back up, the question was, one, is the PPP loan tax exempt? And then the expenses that you use with the PPP loan, is that tax deductible? And based off what Rod had shared and what they cleared up this time around, is the answer is yes. But the question is what's happening in DC and what's happening in Virginia? Virginia right now, so not every state has to follow the federal tax code. So Virginia is one of those states that makes up its own mind on how it's going to proceed. So right now in Virginia, the state legislature is trying to they've determined that the PPP loan is indeed not tax deductible, but are the expenses you use it for tax deductible? And right now they're trying to set a cap of about 25,000 or 100,000. That's going through the state legislature. That has not been determined yet. And I do not know what the DC law is as far as the expenses that are incurred and paid for with the PPP loan. And maybe Rod or Sanjay, you guys have more information on that. I know the state of Virginia is still legislating that, and they're debating whether 25 or 100,000. But that's as far as I got on that one, Linda.
Okay. So that's all the, thanks, Andrew. That's all the questions that were in the chat. So if anyone at this point wants to unmute themselves and ask a question directly to the panel, they can do so at this time.
Can I file a business tax return for 2019 and 2020? Well, yes, you can.
I'm sorry, I didn't have time to type a response to that. So I didn't file for 2019. I'm about to file for 2020. But that's what's kept me from applying for PPP. So should I just file for both right now and then file for the PPP loan? Or should I just forget about PPP altogether?
All right, the short answer is yes, file both.
Okay.
That's the short answer. File
Yes.
for both. And then,
Okay.
you know, you can go ahead and file for PPP 1.0. And you're
Okay.
going to be subject to the old rules and regulations where you can get up to $10 million in a loan as long as you
Okay.
have 500 or fewer employees.
Okay. All right. Well, that's what I needed to know because that's what stopped me and others like me from filing. We just didn't have enough income to file and didn't have the help. I'm a LLC, but a single LLC. So I thought I wouldn't qualify, but I'll make the effort and see what happens.
All right.
Thank
So,
you.
so what
Andy,
will apply to you is the Schedule C that I talked about in the presentation, line 31.
Yes, sir.
And that's how you're going to, you know, calculate your loan amount.
Okay.
Yeah, and Sandy, the one issue that I might caution you is that we're not sure what will happen when we get to submission to SBA if you'll show up on a list as not having filed your return. So you may have to provide proof. So that'll be a situation where if your lender comes back and says to you, you know, you'll have to prove that you actually filed a return. So just keep that in mind because I'm not sure how fast IRS will be able to update their records to reflect that you filed.
Okay. All right. And so that they may in fact ask for the transcript, you're saying, possibly from the IRS, which they may not have turned around quickly. Got
Exactly.
it.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Yep,
That's what I
exactly.
needed to know.
Sandy, you have
question.
time.
I do?
Oh, go ahead.
Okay.
Well, you have till March 31st, right? So
Mhm.
if you file right now, that'll give you, you know, a little less than a month and a half
Okay.
to apply. So
Okay.
yeah, it should be good.
So
Okay.
I
Well,
have
thank
a
you.
Yes, I have a question. I applied for the disaster loan last year and was approved. I never got the money. Please, can I have the explanation what I need to do again?
All right. So in the slides, there's the 800 number. There's also the email disaster customer service at sba.gov, which is also a part of the slides. And you just have to keep, you know, stay on top of it.
Okay, is this slide going to be accessible to us after the presentation?
Yes.
Linda, are you guys going to provide the slides to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Now, Andrew, for your question, are you guys, so in your case, are you using the bank statements to determine the eligibility or excuse me, the 25% drop?
No, so here's what I've had. I mean, given the volume we have, and Rod, you know, we're the number 5 PPP loan processor in the country right now.
Yep.
And that's comparing us with the big guys with B of A and JP Morgan and the rest of them. So we're seeing a lot of volume. And when we see, so we're kind of seeing a little bit of everything. And what we've seen is you can have a business that was established, say, in November, December of 2019, right? So they don't have a full quarter of payroll in 19, but they have shown us, you know, they were a client of ours, so we have bank statements. We can validate that they were in existence, and we can validate payroll because they have a first quarter payroll statement.
Yes, that's what I was going to ask you. Yes.
Now, here's the thing. Now, what we've been doing is with 150,000 and less, they don't have to prove the 25% revenue reduction. They need to attest to it, but they don't
Yes.
need to show us the 25% revenue reduction on 150 and under. Now, if they're over 150, what we've had to do is we've had to say, okay, how do they show us the revenue decline, right? And this is the question that we've gotten several times. What I think I found out the answer to be is we can compare 2 quarters in 2020. That if you can show that you were impacted or financially in 2020 from the pandemic, that we can validate that 25% revenue reduction that way.
All right. So you're taking, let's just say March 31st, and then you're
Yeah.
looking at September 30. That would
Right,
be a
because I
better-
mean,
yeah.
yeah, because that's when everybody was impacted, was April, May, where everyone's like, what's going on here? A lot of companies had that revenue impact in that quarter. So they're showing us that quarter, and then they're showing, hey, this is our 25% revenue reduction in compared to what a normal quarter looks like.
Yeah, and that makes
That's
sense.
right.
And that
Yeah,
makes
okay.
sense. Yes.
Okay.
That makes sense. Yes.
All right, thank you, Rod.
Okay, and then there's one final question up here, if you guys can see it. For the PPP-2 proof of income, can we use statements from QuickBooks that our company president signs as part of the submission? Or does it have to be signed by a CPA, our accountant, and in the form of a tax return?
Oh my goodness, you're making it harder than what it needs to be. Just go ahead and pull out your income statements, okay, and have the majority owner attest to the veracity of the numbers that they're submitting to the bank. You don't need the CPA or anybody else to sign anything. It's the owner, and go ahead and pull it out of QuickBooks, all right?
And your QuickBooks statement is adequate to validate your payroll expense too. Just to add on that, some of the things we've seen is there's an SBA chart out there that can help you calculate your PPP loan.
Mhm.
It looks official, but that has not been accepted by us because it's something that you can just fill out. So to save yourself some time, you got payroll statements, or even if you are like a sole prop or a single member LLC, we could even use canceled checks
Yes.
if that's necessary. But things that haven't been accepted so far are things that are basically prepared by the company, but isn't an official document, if that makes sense.
Wonderful. Are there any other questions from the audience? Okay, well, I would like to personally thank Rod, Andrew, Sonja. Thank you so much. We have gotten a wealth of information today, and their information, the contact information will be in the slides that we'll be sending out to you guys. Again, we want to thank you all for joining us today, for your continued support of the DC Chamber. We hope that you see you at other chamber events. And if you're not a member, we encourage you to join. It is our mission to be a valuable resource and leading advocate for employers throughout the district. Through our programs, we keep our members informed, educated, and connected with each other through B2B and connected with key decision makers. We hope to see you soon. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact the DC Chamber directly at info@dcchamber.org. We want you all to stay safe, and thank you again. Go ahead,
Linda, can I make one last comment?
Yep.
One last comment. All right, guys. I want you guys to go see Sonja and Andrew and go get the money to sustain and grow your business. Okay?
It's
Thank
out
you,
there.
Rod.
Let's do it.
And
Thank
Rod
you.
is awesome.
Sonja, great seeing you. Thank you, Linda, for getting this coordinated. Really appreciate it.
No problem at
All
all.
right.
Good weekend, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Have a great
Bye-bye.
one.
Guys, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.